Today, my wife and I are visiting Colonial Williamsburg, an amazing living history museum in Virginia that tells the early part of America's enduring story. Come along with me and my wife as we explore a history buff's paradise. That's coming up next.
Welcome into the Weavers. Showing the process of making fabric in here. So I'm doing one of our three jobs right now, actually doing the weaving, making some fabric. This is a pretty simple blue and white check fabric. It's made out of linen, and eventually it's going to be used for furniture, so probably seat cushions. But really, as a weaver in the 18th century, they would have just been making the fabric, not really worrying about exactly what it was going to become, because their finished product is just what's wrapped around this beam here. But here in the shop, we do it a little bit differently, just because we aren't quite as specialized. We do a little bit more. So we also do the spinning, making the yarn, string, or thread, and then we do the dyeing, getting the different colors on there. So all three of these jobs would have been done separately in different places by different people. So realistically, for the spinning, it's going to be more of a household chore or a hobby. It's not considered skilled labor, even though I'll be honest, it does take a lot of practice. It does take some skill to build up. But it was pretty common for children around the age of 6 or 7 years old to start learning how to do this. So it's not super hard, it just takes some practice. So it can be done kind of casually. The other two, however, are going to be full-time jobs. So for the weaving, for the most part, they're going to not have a lot of weavers here in Virginia. About 90 to 95% of our fabric is imported. So a lot of the times that's coming from England, through England at least. A lot of the times it's actually made in England because they have such a big textile industry. And because of that big textile industry, England is not encouraging us to do this kind of work here. So in turn, it's really not a profitable job. It's not something people are usually going out of their way to do until we get closer to the Revolutionary War. And then all of a sudden, it becomes very fashionable and patriotic to have fabric that was made here because it's a huge political statement. But it's not super practical. It's still very expensive to try and do that. So a lot of the times, it's only very wealthy people who can afford it. It's usually because they have really big plantations with a lot of space, they have a lot of money to buy the equipment, and they have a lot of enslaved people do this work. Because it does take a lot of people to do it. It's usually about 8 to 10 spinners for every one weaver that you have, so that's 11 people there already. And then you also need people to actually take the fabric and make it into something after that too. And then our last job, the dyeing, is going to be also done professionally, but it is going to be a little bit more common to see it being done here on a larger scale. And that's because we have a lot of fabric here, but the fashions are changing really quickly. So when something gets faded or if it's just not fashionable anymore, people can actually take it apart at the seams, take it to the dyer, have it re-dyed in a more fashionable color, and then they can take it back to the tailors or the mantua makers, have it sewn back together in a new, more fashionable way. And that'll actually save you a lot of the cost because in the 18th century, it's the fabric that's expensive and not necessarily the labor that goes into it.
This is where they weave fabric.
So kind of the opposite of today. So for those of you who just walked in, I am making a little bit of fabric here, but we also do the spinning, so making the yarn, and the dyeing, getting the colors in the yarns and fabrics. So really here, it's kind of a strange type of shop, not something you would see too often in the 18th century. Just because all of these jobs would have been very specialized, they would have been done in different places by different people. So for the weaving, you wouldn't see it too much here in Virginia. It wasn't a super popular job, it wasn't super profitable, and it definitely wasn't encouraged by England because England was really kind of already doing this kind of work. They were making a lot of money off the fabric that they were sending us. And truly for us in Virginia, the fabric coming from England was going to be better quality, it was going to be cheaper, and it was going to be faster. So it really wasn't too big of a decision. We just went to the store and he bought it. And the fabric that I have right here is linen fabric, just a simple blue and white check. I'll show you what it looks like when I use the loom. Right now I'm actually doing the easy part of weaving, which is making the fabric. The hard part is setting up the loom. So to be a weaver in the 18th century, it does take a formal apprenticeship. It's usually about 5 to 7 years of training you have to go through unpaid to become a weaver. So now I can just press the petals. Looks like I'm going to run out of yarn, but press the petals, send the shuttle through, and I have to put some more yarn on the shuttle. And you can see when I press these petals, the harnesses come up and down. And really that hard part of setting up is taking the yarns from the back and placing them through the harnesses here. So connecting the yarns to the right harness, so that when I do press the petals and raise and lower the harnesses, the yarns go with it in the right order. So you can see that opening I have right here. Some of the yarns are going up, some of the yarns are going down, down.
Well, that's a wrap for this Colonial Williamsburg video. I hope you really enjoyed it, getting to see another part of this amazing living history museum. If you like this sort of stuff, check out my other videos. Check out colonialwilliamsburg.org to plan your own visit here, because it's so much cooler in real life than it is on film. Till next time, this is History Buff, TN Photobug signing out, and I'm having a blast with the past.